Happy holidays, everyone, and welcome to episode 17 of Underrated Underdogs. This is your host, Dolapo, coming at you. In virtual studio today, we've got Brandon and Jen. Brandon, how are you doing today, bro?
I'm good. Happy holidays. Although I will admit, I worked so hard to get the top seeding in my fantasy football, only to get dog walked in the first round of the playoffs, and I am now out.
That just absolutely sucks. Well, if it's any consolation, my NBA roster or fantasy roster is just absolute garbage. I've been injured so much. I'm currently on a 5 game losing streak, so hope that helps.
Thanks for your condolences.
Jen, how you doing, man?
Doing great, doing great. Happy holidays, everybody. It's nice to see what a shitty team the Washington football team is. Bringing their own benches. They might as well just have a fight club within their own club. But hey, I'm just super happy. Looking forward to this week.
I wonder what it's like for an away team when they're all chatting amongst each other, and it's like you got to bring your own benches, and there's a chance you might get poo water on you.
I mean, at that point, it's like it might be one of those tactics that they have. Like to get into their the other team's players' brains, literally, with the fungal viruses and everything like that from the poo water. So,
I
hey,
mean,
Washington, you know what you got to do. Hey, at least all I gotta say is at least they're not doing an Urban Meyer.
Look, I've heard of teams. I've heard of teams with the cold shower and making the locker rooms as cold as possible for the away teams. I've never heard of them literally trying to throw shit at someone and just just not giving them benches. But whatever gives you a competitive advantage, I guess.
yeah,
I
but
guess
then it
so.
didn't work.
The complete opposite.
It only works if you have a decent roster. I don't know. That was a terrible game. I mean, like, terrible game to watch if you're a football fan. Great game to watch if you're a Cowboys fan.
Yeah, it was a fantastic game. I mean, I almost turned it off after the first quarter. It seems like Dak was out there like Oprah. It's like you get a touchdown, you get a touchdown, everybody gets a touchdown today.
Mm-hmm.
It's the only game within this season that the offense, defense, and special teams each got a touchdown in the game.
God damn.
So at this point, you got to ask yourself, if you're a Washington football team, please check yourself.
That was definitely a tough game for them. Jen, I know you had a parlay on that game. How did we do on our best this week?
We did pretty well, pretty well. We had a Sunday night parlay that it hit within the first quarter. We had Zeke to score a TD, and we had Dalton Schultz to score a touchdown. Again, that was literally the two first touchdowns. So at that point, I was super ecstatic. That the parlay was sitting at about a 10-1 odd. So overall, it was a pretty solid week.
Nice. And as usual, if you want to get our premium bets, you want to come make some money with us, especially now that you've drained your bank account with the Christmas season. Just follow us on Instagram at underrated FTFW. That once again underrated FTFW. But now let's get into some NFL topics here, some NFL news. There's 2 weeks left in the NFL season, and so far there are a bunch of unclinched playoff spots. In both conferences, the AFC only has Kansas City who've clinched the playoff spot so far. The remaining teams are all sort of fighting for what's left in the playoff seeding. So what we're going to do this episode is actually just go down one by one and discuss each team that's currently in a playoff spot or currently holding a playoff spot, and discuss whether or not we think they're going to make the playoffs based on their final 2 games of the season. So with that being said, Brandon, I'm going to come at you first with the Tennessee Titans. They are currently sitting 10-5. What do you think? The Titans going to make the playoffs this year?
I think they're pretty much a shoe-in for the division title, because basically they can clinch the title with this week with a win over the Dolphins or a loss to the Raiders, or the Colts lose to the Raiders, I would say it's more likely they beat the Dolphins and the Colts lose to the Raiders. That being said, they need to win once in their next 2 weeks to clinch the division title, and their last 2 games are against the Dolphins and the Texans. I imagine they can win one of those games. Even if they don't win this weekend, they'll probably win next weekend. I don't think this weekend was an indicator of the Texans to come. I think it was an anomaly. We've seen it before. So I think they're pretty much a shoo-in for the division title and locked in playoff spot. Looking at the division leaders, because of the tiebreakers they hold, they'll probably keep the second seed.
Mm. And Jen, how about yourself? Do you feel the same way about the Tennessee Titans, or do you see them some kind of epic collapse and falling all the way down to like 7th place or something crazy like that?
No. I think they're definitely going to clinch a playoff spot, but you know, just knowing the Texans or sorry, the Titans, something bound's going to happen in the next 2 weeks. They only have one reliable wide receiver, AJ Brown, and he just came back from injuries. Their run games kind of sucks. Ryan Tannehill throws footballs like sacks of potatoes, except to AJ Brown. So, and Julio Jones might be the worst trade of the season for the Titans for what they gave up and his production. So overall, I think the Titans, they're gonna get into the playoffs, but they're gonna definitely have a lot of issues coming up when they're in the playoffs.
Aren't we expecting King Henry to be back soon?
Yes and no. I mean, like, yeah. I mean, if Derrick Henry comes back, but the thing is that you also gotta think about it from Derrick Henry's perspective. He got his nice extension last year, which is nice, but it was a 2-year deal. After 2 years, they can cut him loose because they don't want to be, they don't want to be the Rams and give Todd Gurley a whole bunch of money and he flames out after a season or two. So there's always that, there's not a huge premiums on running backs anymore, and even though he is the king, um, there's something that that he's going to have to take in consideration is, do I want to come back and help the Titans win maybe 1 or 2 games in the regular season or in the playoffs, or do I take my time, make sure everything is 100% or 110% so that I can continue on with my contract? Because if anything happens next season, he loses his speed, his agility, or his truckiness to through people. He's going to be essentially he's going to turn into a journeyman running back at that point. So I think Derrick Henry's he's probably going to come back maybe for one playoff game, but just looking at it from a perspective that players or businesses, um, definitely something that you know that he's going to have to consider before coming back.
Yeah, I mean, fair enough. Fair enough. Things to think about, but this team, as Brandon said, is on the cusp of clinching that second seed. Um, but let's move to down to the team in the third spot, the Cincinnati Bengals, who are currently sitting at 9-6. Their next 2 games are against the Chiefs and Browns. Brandon, do you think the Cincinnati Bengals will clinch a playoff spot this weekend or next weekend, or not at all?
I don't know about this weekend. They could clinch it, but they have to beat the Chiefs. And that will all depend on the Chiefs because they've clinched a playoff spot, but they might be fighting for the bye. I don't think they'll clinch this weekend because the Chiefs are fighting. I'm just looking at it now. The Chiefs are fighting the Titans essentially for the bye at the moment because if they lose a game, they don't have the tiebreaker, I believe, because the Titans beat them. So they're going to have to win, which means I think they'll beat the Bengals. The Bengals are a good team, but I don't think they're hot Chiefs in December caliber team yet, anyway. So I don't think they'll clinch it this week. And as I look deeper into this AFC North playoff picture, I want to say they'll make the playoffs, but they'll have to beat the Browns. I think that'll solve it for them. So yeah, I think they'll make the playoffs. I don't think they'll clinch anything this week. They might it might come down to the wire.
Jen, do you feel the same way about the Bengals, or do you think the Bengals will be able to squeak this one out?
I think I think KC is most likely going to rest some starters, or at least 40-50% of some of their players, just because they know that they have 2 games essentially locked down um, for the first round bye, and Andy Reid has a history of sitting out players, when it comes to end of the season, just to get the first round bye and everything like that, just kind of get everything rejuvenated. You can tell from the past 2 games where Patrick Mahomes has not thrown touchdowns to Tyreek. Obviously, Kelsey was on the COVID list, and yet he was able to find his other targets um, throughout the game. So I think overall, it's definitely, Kansas City is kind of in a good spot at the moment, and and then for the Bengals, Joe Burrow just threw 500 yards in the last game, but with a third string, well, actually, yeah, be a third string quarterback, and the Ravens and everything like that. But the Ravens did have a really good defense, so I think this is going to be a tough game. That the Bengals is going to be on a must-win mode, where Kansas City is more going to be like a slide. It's kind of like you expect the Kansas City Chiefs to win, but they won't cover their spread kind of situation.
Hmm. Okay. I guess that's a little betting advice there. I don't think the Kansas City Chiefs will cover the spread. But both of you think the Bengals will end up making the playoffs, which is a great thing for them. But let's move on to the team in the fourth spot. Jen, I'm coming to you here. The Buffalo Bills sitting at 9-6. Their next 2 matchups are against the Falcons and the Jets. Do you think the Bills can take this one home and you know, or take these 2 games home and clinch a playoff spot?
I definitely think so. I mean, I hate to say this to you, Brandon, but they won't. The Patriots won't be division titles, for this season, just because Sean McDermott. What we're going to talk about later in the show, that he is in a win mode now, for everything, and I think so is Josh Allen. So is Stephon Diggs. I mean, Stephon Diggs was out on Sunday telling people to shut the fuck up, to Patriot fans. So, I think there's definitely that momentum going for them. And I think they're going to win out and secure maybe the number 2 seed, in the AFC.
Hmm. Brandon, how do you feel about this? Do you think the Bills are making the playoffs as well?
They'll definitely make the playoffs, just because they're going to win the division. I said it last week on the podcast. Um, the Bills Patriots game, was essentially the AFC East title game, because if you look at the schedules of the 2 teams, it's highly likely that they both win out, which wouldn't change the seeding. So it means that the Bills would stay in that spot. That being said, they could move up in the standings, up to that 3rd spot. The division can't be clinched this weekend, but it just comes down to them winning out the games. And they'll clinch the playoffs this weekend. The reality is they have to beat the Falcons and the Rams have to beat the Ravens, which I think are both very viable scenarios. So I think they'll clinch a playoff spot this weekend, and then it'll just come down to the last game of the season where they'll win the division. But I'm not overly upset about it unless we have to play them in the first round of the playoffs.
Would you not want to play them in the first round of the playoffs? Is that
No.
what it is? No.
No, I don't want to do that.
All right. Let's move on to the fifth spot. Jen, I'm coming back to you here again. This time with the Indianapolis Colts and Carson Wentz. They are currently sitting at 9-6 as well. And their final 2 games are against the Raiders and the Jaguars. What do you think happens to the Colts and Mr. Wentz?
I mean, realistically, I think they're going to clinch the playoffs. I mean, it's against the Jags. Let's be honest. Raiders might have a shot of beating them this week, but the Jags got beat by the Jets last week, so they're literally the worst team in the NFL. And at this point, like they might as well just forfeit this game at this point. Even without Carson Wentz, because Carson Wentz is unvaccinated, so he has to stay, I believe, an extra week longer than vaccinated players. But even without Carson Wentz on the field, I think just with the run game of Jonathan Taylor, they're going to clinch the playoff spot. Um, I think for their mentality right now is go after Tennessee and the divisional title. So I think they're going to win out and be in the playoffs. They might be the highest seed in the wild cards, which look out for whoever's going to play them in the playoffs.
Brandon, any chance the Raiders or the Jaguars upset the Colts and bump them out the playoffs or the playoff race?
Um, if they continue the COVID outbreak in the Colts locker room, it will eventually batter them down. Yes. They've already lost Darius Leonard and a bunch of their O linemen. So if it gets worse, then potentially. But I think they should beat the Raiders. They're, I feel like I said this up until now, but they were a way better team than their record suggests. They have a really well built team. Um, as long as everybody's healthy, obviously, led by Jonathan Taylor, that I think the Raiders shouldn't be too big of an issue. Um, and I definitely think they'll beat the Jags. But they can't go for the division title. Basically, Titans have to lose out, and the Titans play Miami and Houston, which means they have to lose both those games in order for the Colts to have a shot to win. And then Indianapolis has to beat both the Raiders and the Jags. So they have to finish with more wins than Tennessee because Tennessee has the tiebreaker. I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think that the Titans are going to lose back-to-back weeks to Miami and Houston. I think that's really unlikely. So I'm going to say they're going to make the playoffs, but they are not taking the division title.
All right. So the sixth place team here, so far, pretty much from 1 to 5, we've you guys have agreed we'll be clinching the either this week or next. Brandon, this team near and dear to your heart, obviously the Patriots, who are also 9-6. Next 2 games against the Jags and the Dolphins. I know you already mentioned earlier that you feel that the Patriots are going to be clinching that playoff spot. When will that happen? This week or next week?
See, we need 2 things to happen. We have to beat the Jags, and the Dolphins have to lose to the Titans this week. And that's a tight game. Miami's been pretty hot. I want to say that it'll happen this weekend and that I won't have to worry about it next week. And we'll just be fighting for seeding. But that being said, all they have to do is beat either they have to get to 10 wins, essentially. I think they'll be safe because what I'm looking at is the difficulty of schedule of the teams that have 8 wins. And I don't know if any of them can get to 10. So as long as we beat the Jags this weekend, I think we'll be safe. It would be better if the Dolphins lose because then we'd actually be clinched and I won't have to worry about other teams.
So, I mean, the Dolphins and Patriots game, that's the last game of the season for you guys, yeah?
Yes.
So if things go poorly for you, next week could be like make it or break it, like pretty much playoff football.
Next week, yeah. If things go as terribly as possible,
Yeah.
next week could very well be like a play-in game.
Do you think these guys are clinching the playoff spot this week or next week?
I mean, I think it's going to be this week for sure. I mean, let's be honest here. Like, the Jags are just completely done. They might as well just throw up their fist for the next 2 games and forfeit themselves because, New England might score, 70 on them this week, coming off of last week's game and everything like that. So I think definitely they're going to clinch this week. It's going to be fun to see Mac Jones loses in the playoff, probably in the first round. So I'm looking forward to that. But hey, he can learn some valuable experience with that one game in the playoffs.
Bear in mind, the Titans also have to beat the Dolphins for the Patriots to officially clinch.
That should be easy. Tua can't throw a pass more than 5 yards 20 times in a game, so that's totally doable. I mean, unless unless God forbid that happens, but unless the Titans all entire 53 players gets put on the COVID list, um, that might be their
So you're
shot. But
counting out
at
Miami
that
in this
point, like,
game in particular?
no, I'm counting on Miami losing
Yeah,
actually, which
that's what I mean.
is what I'm gonna disagree with you in our next
Next topic.
team.
I
Yeah,
mean, like I think this is where things get like super interesting, obviously, because there are four teams with an 8-7 record: the Miami Dolphins, the Baltimore Ravens, the Chargers, and the Raiders. Um, as I said, all with an 8-7 record. Miami currently is sitting in that seventh spot, and pretty much need to win the next two games to get into the playoffs. Those two games, as we mentioned, are against the Titans and then the Patriots. Um, Brandon, do you think the Miami Dolphins make the playoffs?
I don't, um, because what I'm basing it on is I don't think they'll beat the Titans, and I don't think they'll beat the Patriots either. So they very well might lose out, which means they'll be stuck with an 8-7 record, which basically means all of these other teams have to lose out in the 8, 9, and 10. So the Ravens, Chargers, and Raiders. Um, and I think the Chargers might be the place for the last playoff spot because the Ravens play the Rams and the Steelers. The Rams are obviously, um, I would say, a better team in that sense, and they're fighting for seeding because they may have clinched, but the division title in the NFC West is still up for grabs. Um, and then the Steelers are also fighting for a playoff spot. So a lot of these teams in the hunt are going to have to like win out and then hope for the best. And so none of them are going to want to lose. They're all going to play basically playoff football at this point. So you're running into the Rams, which are a better team trying to win the division, and you have the Steelers who are also fighting for their lives. So I think they would be lucky to come up with one game, whereas the Chargers play the Broncos and the Raiders. And while they're both technically in the hunt, um, I just don't think they're as good of a quality a team as the other ones have to play. So I think the Chargers have the best chance to take that seventh playoff spot. So I think where I'm sitting is like most of these playoff teams from 2 to 6 are pretty much going to make the playoffs. I don't know what the seeding will be, um, but I don't think the Dolphins will make it in this year.
Jen, you mentioned earlier that you'd be disagreeing with Brandon. Do you think the Dolphins will be making the playoffs this year?
I it seems like Brandon has looked at my notes too because I actually think that the Chargers is gonna replace the Dolphins as well, just solely based off of when it comes to the strength of their schedule and everything like that. Um, and I think that they're definitely going to make it to the playoffs. And just especially after that horrendous loss to the Texans, where they allowed the Texans, to put essentially a 40 burger on them.
I think us spending so much time together talking about the bets, the parlays, the podcast, we've just our brains are starting to work the same because not only was it the same thought, it was the exact same rationale.
Hmm. I think just for shits and giggles, I think it would be amazing if the Raiders somehow made the playoffs. Like like it
I don't
would
think
be
that's gonna happen.
fucking awesome.
Is that because I bet on it and then I reneged myself out of that bet and then I would have to eat my own words plus I already based it on losing a bet? So
Exactly,
it'd just be my worst case scenario would be the Raiders making the playoffs.
exactly. That's the only reason why.
They'd also be making the playoffs with an interim head coach.
So good for him. So I guess I'm rooting for the Raiders now. I'm watching every Raiders game closely. Unless they lose on Sunday, then it's all over. But now that we are done with the AFC, let's move to the NFC, where things seem to be a little more stable. There are actually five teams who have clinched a playoff spot. So we'll go over those five teams really quickly. It's the Green Bay Packers with a 12-3 record, the Dallas Cowboys with an 11-4 record, the Rams with an 11-4 record, Tampa Bay with same record, and then the Arizona Cardinals with a 10-5 record. So the two spots that are available are being held by the Niners and the Eagles. So we'll start off with the Niners as we did in the AFC. So the San Francisco Niners currently sitting at 8-7. Um, they who do you think they're going to be making the playoffs this year?
I'm trying to find their schedule because I think they'll win. Well, I'm pretty sure they'll win this week. They play the Texans. I feel like the Texans are just in the middle of a lot of these playoff scenarios, but they have nothing to do with it. Um,
Yeah.
so if they beat the Texans this week, they'll be in good standing. If the Saints lose to the Panthers, they will clinch. I don't think that will happen. I don't understand the New Orleans Saints because they will go beat the Bucks and hold them scoreless, and then they will get beat by Miami. So I don't know if I entirely understand how the Saints operate, but I'm assuming that they won't lose to the Panthers. I don't know that for sure though. But if that happens, 49ers will claim a playoff spot. I'm looking at again these teams in the hunt. So you have the Vikings who play the Packers and Bears, the Falcons who play the Bills, and then the Saints who play the Panthers and the Falcons. And the only team that I can imagine would win out is the Saints, who play the Panthers and then the Falcons. In which case, that the Eagles will be the team that loses that situation. So I think the 49ers will make the playoffs. Sorry, I just did the entire playoff equation in my head out loud. There's just a lot of information to look at on this screen.
I mean, we'll still come back to you for just to get your full take on the Eagles because we're going to go over the matchups there. But Jen, speaking about the 49ers, do you think the 49ers make the playoffs or clinch their playoff seeding this week or next week?
No, I think the 49ers are shit out of luck.
Oh shit, they're missing the
I think
playoffs?
they're gonna miss the playoffs.
Ooh. Why is that? Give us a reason.
Just because Jimmy Garoppolo is a bum at this point. At the same time, it's just I don't think Jimmy's gonna, be helpful when it comes to their playoffs push, and he's just there for a check.
So Jimmy G is going to lose this for the Niners. Is what you're telling me?
Yeah.
All right. So far, I guess you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 locked in, and Niners are missing the playoffs. All right. How about the Eagles? They are also sitting with an 8-7 record. Their next two games against the Washington Football Team and the Cowboys. Do you think the Eagles make the playoffs?
No, I don't think they're gonna make it to the playoffs. Nick Sirianni can talk all the shit he wants, but he's at the end of the day, he's still a bum. When it comes to his coaching play as well as everything else, it just seems like, you know, he's not fit to be a coach.
Brandon, what are your thoughts? Eagles make the playoffs or no?
Um, I like I said, I think the Saints will actually sneak into that last spot. The reason being is because I think they'll beat Washington Football Team. I don't think that'll be too much of an issue, and they'll play the Cowboys. And albeit the Cowboys are already clinching the division title and a playoff spot, which means they don't really have a lot to worry about. But I just don't think they want to lose a divisional game on the last game of the season. I think it's more of a pride thing. So I think they might sit some people, but they're not going to sit Dak or Zeke. I don't think, um, because they don't want to lose a divisional game, the last game of the season. I think it's too much of a rivalry there. So I actually think Philly will finish off with a 9-8 record. And I still think the Saints are going to win out because they play the Panthers and the Falcons. So I think they'll overtake that last playoff spot. And the 49ers will make it into the playoffs. So I don't know exactly how the seeding works because I haven't gone into like the third and fourth level tiebreakers of how it works because these guys, I don't think they played each other this year. But 49ers and Saints are my final two playoff spots.
Okay. Jen, you kicked out both the Eagles and the 49ers. Who'd you have in their place making the playoffs?
I'd like the Vikings and the Saints here. Minnesota usually plays really well when it comes to divisional rivals, and uh, and the Bears are just the Bears. They plain suck. Um, and I think, San Fran might, win out the rest of the games, but at the same time, you don't know what's going to happen when it comes to um, Jimmy G and his durability, and him getting sick all the time and everything like that. So um, I think overall, it's definitely going to be tough for the 49ers because of their quarterback selections, actually.
Okay, but do you have them making the playoffs then? Are you going back on your word from earlier, or do you have any of the the Vikings, the Falcons, or the Saints filling up those two spots up the 6 and 7 spots that are open?
No,
You're sticking with the Vikings and the
yeah,
Saints,
speaking of the
just so
Vikings
we're
and the
clear.
Saints.
Okay.
Vikings and Saints. All right. All right. So Brandon, you've got the 49ers and the Saints. Jen, you've got the Saints and the Vikings making the playoffs in the NFC. All right. Now let's move on to another big news that came out this week. So that the Pro Bowl selections are out. Obviously can't go over the entire roster. That would take a long ass time. So what we're just going to do here really quickly is just go over two snubs. So Brandon, I'll start with you first. Give me two guys you think don't deserve to be on this All Star team, and who do you think should take their place?
I'm going to be a stickler here, and I'm going to take the quarterback selections on either side because they're the skill positions that are easiest to critique. Um, for the NFC, it was Brady, Rogers, and Murray. My take is get rid of Kyler Murray and throw in Matt Stafford um, because if you look at just their stats on the year, which is mostly what this Pro Bowl selection is based on, out of Brady, Rogers, Stafford, and Murray, Murray is the only one who hasn't thrown over 30 touchdowns. Um, and although he does have less interceptions thrown than Stafford, that like Stafford has 36 touchdowns, Murray has 21. Like there's a big difference there. Stafford has more touchdowns than Rogers, who is selected to the Pro Bowl, um, and he has over 1,000 more yards than Murray. Albeit he did play 3 extra games, but attrition is part of what makes a player great in the NFL. So I think that Stafford should be in, Murray should be out. I do think the injury hurt him, but it's part of football. So I'm saying get rid of Murray, put in Stafford. And just a fun note, the average age of the AFC quarterbacks is 24. The average age of the NFC quarterbacks in the Pro Bowl is 35. And if you sub Stafford with Murray, it's 38. An average age of 38 years old for the Pro Bowl selections on quarterbacks.
Jesus Christ.
That's insane. And flipping over to the AFC, because I chose the quarterbacks for this one, I'm going to say get rid of Lamar Jackson and throw in Josh Allen. And it pains me to say this because he's a divisional rival. That being said, Lamar Jackson is the only one selected to the Pro Bowl who has less than 20 touchdowns. He's got 16 touchdowns, 13 interceptions. Josh Allen has 34 touchdowns and 12 interceptions. I don't know what happened there, but he's doubled his touchdowns with less interceptions. So I don't know why Lamar Jackson was selected. I get the dual threat piece, but nobody's going to be trying for the Pro Bowl. So might as well just go with Josh Allen. He also has over 1,000 more yards and a better overall rating with a higher completion percentage. There is no reason that Lamar Jackson should be in the Pro Bowl just based on anything. Josh Allen beats him in every category. There's no reason. And again, he's the only one. So if you look at Herbert, Mahomes, and Jackson, who are the current Pro Bowl selections in the AFC, and you throw in Allen, Jackson is the only one with less than 30 touchdowns and less than 4,000 yards. I don't know why the selections were made like that, but it just seems ridiculous that a player who outplayed on the stat sheet one so much better than the other is not in the Pro Bowl.
Mm. I mean, the I guess the one argument that I could, or not argument, the one reason I could see that happening is obviously Lamar Jackson is a household name. Like, you walk anywhere and everyone knows who he is. Josh Allen obviously is getting there, but Lamar was literally Madden cover last year, previous MVP. So could be just one of those things. Where it's like, maybe Lamar should be in there, and unfortunately, the younger Josh Allen just doesn't make it. Um, Jen, how about yourself? Give me two guys that you take off the Pro Bowl selection, and who would you replace them with?
I gotta say, going through the tight ends, I think we got to give some credit to the Dallas tight end, Dalton Schultz.
Of
Of
course.
course, he's like the underrated player of tight ends. He's reliable. He's there to catch passes from Dak and everything like that. And also, the other ones that I can think of is Gronk can replace Kyle Pitts. It's kind of like the same conundrum that you have when it comes to Kyle Pitts, kind of like Lamar Jackson and Matt Stafford. Pitts was a top 5 pick. He's supposed to be this generational talent and everything like that. But in reality, he was an okay rookie at this point. So
Yeah, Dalton Schultz is not like a highlight reel. I feel like he's never on the highlight reel and nobody ever talks about him. But he's pretty much on par with George Kittle for the season stats. He's like 100 yards short, um, 4 catches shy, but the same amount of touchdowns. So as far as the NFC tight ends go, I don't think you could have made a better argument.
Hmm. Any other names that you'd scratch off there,
yeah,
Jen?
Gronk will be the next one there. With everything that he has done. I know that he missed games and everything like that, but at the same time, he's definitely he deserves to get the Pro Bowl nod for sure.
Brandon. I know there was one last person that you had in mind, Brandon.
Yes, you can hear me rapidly typing away at who to consider. Um, Alvin Kamara made the Pro Bowl this year. And while normally I wouldn't start a fight about Alvin Kamara making the Pro Bowl, he was out for a lot of games and he didn't have as great of a year as he normally did. He was also in my fantasy and barely got any points. What, last night, 2 nights ago? So he's not a favorite right now. That being said, um, we had it on the sheet here that we'd replace him with Antonio Gibson. If you look at their stats, he's got more yards, more carries, more yards per rush, and he's played more games. Like I said before, attrition is part of the NFL. Staying healthy the whole season, especially in the running back position. Obviously, it's tough. You saw Christian McCaffrey, Alvin Kamara, and Derrick Henry all suffer long-term injuries this year. Um, and so you can see how guys that are so good get hurt. But Gibson took that and had a great year. I think you should go out with Alvin Kamara and in with Antonio Gibson. And I think that's something we universally agree on. I think. I'm not sure.
Jen, agree or disagree?
I definitely agree that he should definitely replace Kamara, because Kamara is more of like an everyday known player, but at the same time, it's just Pro Bowl kind of sucks for players that that plays well, but um, you know because they don't because the I guess their nationality popularity or their national popularity is not there, so they get snubbed. Um, I was actually quite surprised that Matt Stafford got snubbed.
So was I.
But that pretty much brings us to the end of our show, guys. Hope you guys had an amazing time listening to it. We definitely had an awesome time making it for you. We'll be back next week with another episode. Before that, make sure you check us out on YouTube, follow us on Instagram at underratedftfw, and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts, and hit that subscribe button on YouTube as well. Help us out with the algorithms. Until next week, Happy New Year, everyone. Bye-bye.